welcome to the 18th episode of Planetos Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the fans of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and HBO's A Game of Thrones. Spoiler warning, this show will cover all material, including the main series, Dunk and Egg, the novellas, Fire and Blood, The World of Ice and Fire, quotes and interviews by George and episodes of the show, and its commentaries and bonus materials. I'm one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me on Twitter at HomelyPillow.
And I'm your other host, Travis. You can find me at Sir_Travis on Twitter. We hope you enjoy today's show. All right, so today we discuss Melisandre, the Red Woman. We all know who she is, a Red Priestess of R'hllor, a Shadowbinder trained in Ashai in the far east of Essos, a devotee of the Lord of Light, and some say the true queen to King Stannis Baratheon. Melisandre is red and terrible and red, as Maester Cresson tells us in A Clash of Kings prologue. She has red eyes and long red copper hair. She is garbed in crimson dresses and robes, with a red ruby on a choker at her neck. She is described as beautiful and tall, graceful and slender, with full breasts, a narrow waist, and a heart-shaped face. She speaks in a deep voice with an Eastern accent. Melisandre is one of the most complicated characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. She is misunderstood, George says. She sees visions in the flames and came to Dragonstone in the court of Stannis Baratheon and his family, thinking he is Azor Ahai reborn, the warrior of light, the one who will stand against the great other. Melisandre presents herself as cautious and serene, gifted and powerful. She has a few tricks literally up her sleeves, which we will learn more about today, and she may be very, very old. And with us on today's episode to discuss the Red Woman is really one of the nicest, most talented members of our fandom, Vanessa Cole. Vanessa, welcome to Planetos Podcast.
Thanks so much, guys. It's really great to be here. Pleasure to be joining you today.
All right. So, Vanessa, first of all, tell the folks where they can find you on social media, and we know you're on Watchers of the Wall and the Night's Cast, but give some plug for all that.
Sure. So yes, I am a contributing writer for Watchers on the Wall. Haven't been able to write as much of late, but hopefully when season 8 gets going, we'll have a lot more articles there to share. We also do semi-monthly podcasts. It's the Night's Cast at Night's Cast on Twitter. So definitely follow us there and check us out. And you can also follow me on Twitter at VKColeArtist and on Instagram at VKColeArt, where you can see my recent artwork projects,
which are spectacular. I mean, the way you capture the actors and the characters from the show is just amazing. It looks like you're the artist, the cinematographer of those shots, so really well. Everyone check those out. You're doing some giveaways on there.
Yes, we do a Night's Cast giveaway. I'm actually running one myself on Twitter as well. So whenever I reach 1,500 followers, yay, I'm going to give away a free artwork of your choice. So all you have to do is follow me and then find the tweet and retweet and like it, and you'll be entered to win that.
Great. All right. So, Vanessa, I know you've had a chance to maybe listen to a couple of our episodes. We're a small podcast here. We thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and all the stuff you're doing in the fandom to join us. But one of the reasons we started this podcast was to try and give fans a chance to join us, tell their fandom stories, and then focus on a topic for each episode. And we kind of call this capturing fans' Song of Ice and Fire story. We've had several guests on who've done this. So what we're going to do today is, before we get into the material on Melisandre and the chapter from A Dance with Dragons, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we'll capture your story and let you tell the fans how you got into A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. So first question, how did you get into this fandom and into the books and the show?
So I have a friend who had been really pushing me to read the books for a while because he knew I was into fantasy stories. And I kept putting it off. I was like, I'm busy. I don't have time to get involved in this. Like, it was 4 books at the time. And so I finally broke down, because he told me, they're making it a TV show. They're doing season 1 now. You really need to read it and you need to watch the show. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So I finally broke down and got the books. And this was, I think, after season 1 had finished, and Dance with Dragons had just come out. So luckily, I didn't have to wait for that. I was able to just jump right in and have all 5 of them at once. I binged the books in 2 weeks.
Wow.
No one believes me, but I'm dead serious. 2 weeks. I basically did nothing but read and occasionally eat and sleep, because I was just so engrossed in them. But needless to say, I did miss a lot of the, there's so many details. So I missed a lot because I, kind of skimmed through some of it. But so I read them in 2 weeks, and then I binged the first season of the show. And, I was hooked after that. I really didn't get involved in the fandom too much. I think, like I said, this was 2011 when A Dance with Dragons came out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I really didn't get involved in the fandom. I would go online and read theories, of course, because the first thing I did once I finished A Dance with Dragons is like, oh my gosh, is John really dead? I gotta find out what other people think, because I was just really distressed over that, because he was one of my favorite characters. And so then I stumbled onto R plus L equals J, and just went down a rabbit hole from there. So, but I really didn't get into the fandom until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it came into it in a really strange way. I love trivia, and so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the trivia app. It's QuizUp. And they have different categories. They have a Game of Thrones category that's show-based questions. They have one on the book series. And so I got on there, started playing the book trivia, and they have message boards for each category. And there was a group that was really active at the time, not so much anymore, but they would organize tourneys, like trivia tourneys, where you'd play against each other, and everyone would take on names from the series. And it was just a lot of fun. So I got to be really friendly with the people on the message board, and some of them were in the A Song of Ice and Fire Facebook group. And so I ended up joining that group, and then from there, stumbling onto all of the podcasts like Radio Westeros, History of Westeros. And so it just really got engrossed in the fandom and everything associated with it. And the rest is history, I guess.
Great. Great. That sounds pretty cool, especially from the trivia aspect, that's kind of what brought you in, and then you met some folks and jumped in from there. I love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned John is one of your favorite characters. Let's talk about the books and the TV show in particular. Like, do you have a favorite book of the series, a favorite season or episode of the series, and also the same thing with characters or a storyline? What's your favorite from all those mediums? Sure.
So I guess I probably have a pretty common answer for favorite book and season. It would be Storm of Swords in season 3. And I know that people will make the argument that A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons are better written, like the prose is better and just a better flow, whatever. That's fine. I'm a very emotional person. So those emotionally charged storylines and plot points are what really keep me coming back to the series. So there's so many iconic moments in both the season and A Storm of Swords that I just absolutely love, and I love rereading. With the exception of the Red Wedding, I still enjoy it. It's just really tough. But there's just so many great moments that happen that it's just going to forever be my favorite. As far as storylines, I really love John's storyline, and I really identify with Daenerys a lot, as you might have realized from seeing my Twitter lately. But I really enjoy both those storylines. Even the Marine stuff, I know people kind of get bogged down in those chapters, but I'm going to do a plug, and I apologize. I don't remember the name of the person who wrote them. It is a series of essays. It's the Marinese Blot. Mm-hmm. But it's fantastic. He discusses a lot of the Dance with Dragons storylines, and Daenerys in particular with Marine and the political machinations that are going on. And it gives you a really good understanding of what's actually happening there. And I think it enhances your enjoyment of that storyline.
Yes, I think those are great essays to really help you flesh out what's going on there. Got to agree with you on A Storm of Swords, though. Great book. All of them are good. We love all of them, but A Storm of Swords has a special place in my heart too. What are you excited about most in The Winds of Winter?
Well, funnily enough, before I watched or before we got to season 6 of the show, my biggest plot point, I was looking forward to seeing John come back, and it's actually still one of my things that I'm eagerly anticipating, just because I think it's going to be different. I don't think they explored it very well in the show. I mean, yes, it was nice seeing him come back, but I'm interested to see how changed his character will be.
Yes.
So that's going to be really fascinating to read, especially if maybe we get some perspective of him in Ghost's body. That would be really interesting to read. And then along with that, I really want him to finish his crypt dream from the Crypts of Winterfell.
Yes.
And I feel like that's when we're going to get the completion of it, maybe with Bran's help. I don't know. So I'm just really interested to see how that ends up happening in the books. And then of course I don't know if Daenerys will make it back to Westeros. By the end of the Winds with Winter. I cannot talk today, sorry guys.
It's fine.
I don't know if she'll make it to Westeros by the end of the book, but I am eagerly anticipating seeing that played out in the books as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really. I mean, I think just to jump out of the questions here for a minute, the Dany's arc, I think, in season 6 is probably pretty close to what happens in the books. Although I think we're going to get her visiting more cities along the way as she prepares to sail for Westeros and tying up loose ends over there. But I'm also very interested in the Jon Snow returns, because I do think I love the resurrection episode in season 6, the scene, but I just wish there had been more torment for him coming back, that, you know. And I do think, like you said, if he's existing in Ghost, which is sort of like on the astral plane that people are talking about, that might be where he starts communicating with Bran, or Bran puts these visions in Ghost's head that Jon then picks up. I think it's just going to be fascinating to see how that all plays out.
And one of the things that I like about Jon's character, or find really interesting, and we'll talk about it later because it happens in this chapter, but he has those moments where he has like this super strength, and Viserys always talks about, don't wake the dragon, but to me it's like his moments of like waking the dragon, where he just has this like super strength where he gets really angry or pissed off, and I'm anticipating we'll get more of that when he comes back, because I feel like he'll be more feral and aggressive, especially if he spends some time in Ghost. So I think it's going to be interesting to see Jon less in control than he normally is.
Yes.
So I really want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I always like, for some reason I always just like think that it's going to be like maybe a chapter, but it's probably going to be a lot of chapters that he spends time in Ghost. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, like, does Ghost get his own POV, or does Jon continue to have a POV, or does he just set off page for a long time while George gets through these other stories? It's just going to be fascinating to see, and how he uses, jumping between POVs, if he plots them with Bran's POVs or whomever, is there a reason that he connects them the way he does? So I think it's gonna be really fascinating. What about season 8? What are you most excited about for season 8?
Well, I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic about season 8. I am not overly critical of the show. There are things that I have not liked, but usually I can kind of get over it and just look at it as like, it's entertainment. There are things that they have to do differently because they're catering to a different audience, so I get that. But the fact that I can still watch a season like season 7, which it definitely had its moments that weren't done as well, but when I can still watch it and have times where I'm jumping out of my seat, I'm cheering, I'm clapping, I'm crying, I get emotional. The fact that it still draws me in and I still care is, I think, a big point in favor of it. Because, there are other shows, The Walking Dead, which I watched from the beginning. I just don't even care anymore. I don't care. I don't care about any of the characters that are left. There is nothing tying me and like really drawing me into the story anymore.
Yeah.
And so the fact that Game of Thrones can still do that, it makes me glad that they're getting out while the getting is good before it gets to the point where just nobody cares. So I'm excited to see what they do with like the big battles. I know that's going to be really fun. I am eagerly anticipating seeing which characters live and die, because although it may not be completely one-to-one with what George is going to do, at least for the main characters, I think it's going to give a good indication of how their stories are going to end up in the books. So there are definitely some that I want to see live, and I'm kind of scared to see what's going to happen next season.
Yeah.
But we'll find out.
Great. A couple more questions, and then we'll get into the meat of the episode. How did you start writing for Watchers on the Wall?
So I'm a big fan of Westworld as well. If you guys don't know, I write for Watchers' sister site, Westworld Watchers. And I had seen that they were looking for writers. So it was, I think, right after season 1. And so I just sent in some samples of writing that I had done, and they let me come write for them. And
Nice.
So I kind of back-ended my way into writing for Watchers on the Wall, because there were times where, people needed a story and everyone else was busy, and I said, hey, I'm here, I can do it if you need somebody. So I just hopped over there and started writing for them as well, and it's been great. Everyone over there is wonderful. It's been a really nice learning experience, and I've really enjoyed it.
Cool. You mentioned that being a fan of fantasy brought you into A Song of Ice and Fire. What other books or series or shows fantasy in the fantasy genre are you a fan of?
Well, obviously, like The Hobbit,
Sure,
Lord
right.
of the Rings. Those are the big ones. I really liked the Narnia books when I was a kid as well, and
Right.
ended up reading them to my kids when they were little, and that was always fun. I really liked, and there's some series on King Arthur and Merlin. The Crystal Cave, I think, was the first one in a series. I can't remember the name of the whole thing now, but those are really fun. But yeah, I haven't really branched too far out into some of the other works that are out there, because I just don't have the time. Hate to say that, but when you've got 3 kids and you're writing and you're doing arts,
Right.
finding time to read is a little bit low on my list of priorities, unfortunately, at the moment.
Sure. That's understandable. All right, I want to close the questions about your art, because, like we said earlier, you're an amazing artist. Have you always been so well? Did you go to school for this? Are there other things that you like to draw besides Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire?
So, I've drawn ever since I was little. I guess I've always had a talent for it. I remember my parents had said something about getting me art lessons when I was younger, and they tell me, I said, well, why do I need lessons? I already know how to draw. So I feel like I'm a little more humble now than that, maybe. But yeah, I've always drawn. I did take a couple classes in high school and college, but I never really did a whole lot with it. Actually, I think college was really the last time I did any serious artwork until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So when I kind of got more involved in the fandom and looking at all this, great art that other fan artists have put out, I'm like, oh, it'd be fun. Let me see if I could do something like that. So I just gave it a shot and started drawing again, and I've steadily improved, I think, in the past 3 years. So it's been a lot of fun. I've done some Westworld stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have done a few other things. So I've done some landscapes. I've got a few painting around the house of landscapes and things like that. Animals. I've done commissioned work for friends of mine of family portraits or pets. So I do other things. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. The Game of Thrones stuff is really taking the bulk of my time at the moment.
Sure.
Because of the Night's Cast giveaways we're doing. I've had to focus a lot of time on that. With Con of Thrones coming up in July, I really want to have a table with my artwork. So I'm trying to really focus on getting all of that done before July. But yeah, I'm hopeful that I can start branching out into doing some other stuff. As much fun as I'm having doing Game of Thrones. I would like to do more book-focused art, which I just haven't had the time for. But yeah, I do want to branch out into other things as well. So, but hopefully after July, I'll be able to have a little more free time.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. Again, your art's amazing. You're an amazing member of the fandom. We thank you for all the interactions we've had together on Twitter and everything. And everyone follows Vanessa. Check out Night's Cast. Check out her artwork. Great stuff. So let's get into this episode. This is an exciting chapter. We're going to have a lot to discuss at the end. I want to run through the synopsis here and get this started. Melisandre gets only one chapter in the whole series, and it comes in the latest book, A Dance with Dragons. And here is its synopsis. It was never truly dark in Melisandre's chambers. She has candles burning and the hearth fire raging day and night to keep the dark at bay. She is looking into the flames, searching for a vision of her king. She sees shapes dancing, forming, and disappearing. Eyeless faces, towers by the sea crumbling as a dark tide sweeps over them. Blood and skulls and mist. Bodies locked in lust, curtains of fire, great winged shadows wheeling against the sky. She looks again for the girl in gray on a dying horse. Jon Snow would expect it and would want to know when and where the girl is. A face appears. Stannis? But no, not his features. A wooden face with red eyes, 1,000 eyes. Beside him, a boy with a wolf's face howls. Melisandre shudders. Blood trickles down her thigh, black and smoking. Agony and ecstasy fill her. The fire burns inside her. Voices and memories come racing back to her. Melanie, a woman cries. Lot 7, a man calls. She was weeping and her tears were flame. Snowflakes and ashes, gray and white, flaming arrows, wooden walls, dead things beneath gray cliffs. Fires in 100 caves, then the wind and white mist sweeps in on cold and only skulls remain. Death. The skulls are death, she thinks. Jon Snow, a name is whispered. His long face appears, a man, now a wolf, now a man again. Skulls all around him. She's tried to warn him, daggers in the dark. The boy would not listen. Her servant enters. Devon Seaworth. What do you see, the boy asks. Much and more. Pain. R'hllor spoke through fire, ash, and cinder. Melisandre has practiced for years beyond count and had paid the price. No one in her order could compare to her, she thinks. I pray for a glimpse of Azor Ahai, and he only shows me snow. Snow with a capital S. A drink, Devon, she commands. She kept Devon Seaworth behind, despite the boy's wishes to march with Stannis, because she saw his father Davos as one of the most loyal servants to Stannis Baratheon, and she doesn't want the Onion Knight to lose more sons. Stannis has left her cripples and cravens, drunkards and greybeards back at Castle Black to guard and serve her, taking the able-bodied men for the battle to come. Dawn is now upon Castle Black. Melisandre doesn't sleep much, usually just an hour a night. She fears to dream, and the dreams that haunt her. Melanie, Lot 7. Was it the Great Other she saw? No, he would be more terrible than that, she thinks. Food, she thinks. Some days she forgot to eat, but she would need to keep that from mortal men. She thinks on Jon and the fact that he doesn't use the trappings of power, for power itself flows from those trappings. Melisandre sends for breakfast and for the wildling Rattleshirt. While Devon is gone, she washes and changes, and she checks the potions and powders hidden in her sleeve, which augment her spells, she says. But she is running low on supplies. The wall, though, makes her stronger even more than in a shy. The Lord of Bones arrives without his bones. She admonishes him for not wearing them. A ruby pulses at his wrist. Rattleshirt tells her that he feels its heat and burns him. He wants to pry it out. He has lived, sang songs, drunk wine, kissed the Dornish man's wife, he says. He is content to die now. Melisandre warns him wants him to leave and find the gray girl on the horse she saw. She tells him where she sees the girl, and Rattleshirt believes it is west of Long Lake. They are interrupted by a horn, blasting just once, marking the return of rangers. Melisandre orders Rattleshirt to remain and goes to see John, thinking on the vision of 3 dead rangers she saw. When she arrives beyond the wall, Melisandre finds John with the heads of the 3 rangers impaled on spears. She walks back with John, telling him about the vision of towers by the sea. Eastwatch, he says. Was it? She asks herself. Yes, that must be it, Melisandre responds. The men of the Night's Watch and the Queen's men are angry about the dead rangers. She considers how similar Stannis and Jon are, unbelievers by nature, mistrustful and suspicious, following only the gods of honor and duty. They return to her chambers, and Jon is angry to find Rattleshirt there, breaking his fast. The wildling wants horses for his search for Arya. Jon grows even angrier after he realizes the Red Woman is sending the wildling to find his sister. And Rattleshirt points out that Jon betrayed Ygritte. Melisandre cries out a word, which is heard differently by everyone in the room. And the glamour ends, and Mance appears. Melisandre spared him. She tells Jon that the king beyond the wall will find the girl, but the Lord Commander is still hesitant. She will not reveal the difficulty of the glamour spell. It takes something personal, she says. The bones help. The bones remember. The strongest glamours are built of such things. A dead man's boots, a hank of hair, a bag of finger bones. These things help in changing a man's appearance. The more effortless a spell seems, the more men fear its power and the sorcerer casting the spell. Stannis demanded Mance's death, and Jon wanted to save the wildling leader. This is the best of both worlds, Melisandre suggests. Mance owes you his life, and we hold his child. Stannis burned a traitor, as the law demands, and Jon wanted a way to save his little sister and honor the vows he made before the heart tree. There he stands, she points, Mance Raider, Arya's deliverance, a gift from the Lord of Light and me, Melisandre says. All right. I love this chapter. And I don't think on the first read through that I really picked up on. It was almost like there was just so much coming at you because, one, this is the first time you're in Melisandre's head, and there's so much imagery and symbolism here, and even foreshadowing that we're going to talk about today. But, going back and listening to it again and rereading it again, it's just some really powerful stuff in here, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more. But what's your also initial reaction to reading this chapter again? Or what did you think the first time through even?
The first time through, I was surprised that there was a Mel chapter. but I thought it was cool seeing that Melisandre, actually does believe in Stannis.
And I want to hold that point there that you say, Brad, that she believes in Stannis, because I think there's some interesting things that she does that we'll talk a little bit more about that may impact Jon later on. Mm-hmm. That I want to discuss, Well, anyways, Vanessa, what's your reaction? I want to get to that here in a minute.
Yeah, so I don't really remember how I felt about it the first read through. Like I said, I read the 5 books pretty quickly. But no, what I really do like about it, because you have this perception of who she is and what her intentions are throughout reading the rest of the books, and you really don't get this humanization of her. You don't get to see her doubt and her fears, and I think it was really nice to see inside her head and realize that she isn't as confident as she makes herself out to be. I think that's one of the things that I love about Daenerys, and also one of the things I think it makes it hard for her to hard for Emilia Clarke to portray her on screen is because you're in her head so much that she's always projecting this outward sense of confidence and power, and she doesn't really allow herself to show any fear or doubt or misgivings. And so she may come off kind of cold and uncaring, where when you're in her head, you really see all of the things that she thinks about. And like what's it really in her heart. And I think it's kind of the same thing with Melisandre.
Yes.
And one of the things that really stood out to me with Melisandre was the fact that she asked for Devon to stay because she didn't want Davos to have to suffer losing another child. And you can say what you want about her. I don't think she's evil, misguided, yes, zealot, whatever. But the fact that she would go out of her way to spare him another loss, even though he really doesn't like her,
Right.
I think speaks to her character. I do think she has the best interests of the people that she's with and the realm at large at heart. Is she misguided about the way she achieves some of the things that she wants? Yes, but that was what really struck a chord with me. Is like, wow, she is a human. She has a heart for people. She cares, and that wasn't something that I was expecting.
Well, and your comments perfectly jump off of what Brett said about the fact that she's a true believer in Stannis. But I think the point that you make is this outward projection of power that Melisandre shows every day. I mean, she is clad in red. She wants to make people not only fear her, but also understand that she is a powerful entity. And I was really drawn to, and we're going to jump around here a little bit, but I was really drawn to her comments about the trappings of power in this chapter. And one of the reasons that I brought up Brett's point, or when Brett made the comment about believing truly in Stannis, and I think she does. I mean, we're going to talk here in a little bit about the visions that she sees and why she's either misguided or she's interpreting them wrong. Why does she glamour a sword then for Stannis in Lightbringer if she thinks he's really Azor Ahai? Why do you all think that she does that?
I think, if she really truly believes the Nissa Azor Ahai story, I think that she believes that he will forge it at some point. He just hasn't had the opportunity yet, or couldn't bring himself to do it yet. And so she wants to give him at least the illusion so that maybe he will believe more, because he probably was. I would think he would be kind of dismissive of her when she first came to him, telling him all this crazy stuff. He's probably like, yeah, whatever. I don't believe any of that.
Yeah.
So her doing these things to make him believe in it, I think, is a big part of putting him on that path. And so I think that's why she glamours the sword, so that not only everyone else will believe it, but he'll believe more in it too.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big skeptic, so it probably took a lot for him to get to the point you see him in Storm of Swords. Clash of Kings, in a Clash of Kings, like where he's doing the ceremonies, and still he's even uncomfortable with it.
Right. I mean, it catches fire, like his arm catches fire, and they have to put it out. And I think what's interesting is, and I think you both are right, that it's not only an outward projection for everyone to see that Stannis is Azor Ahai, but also for the king himself. But I just wonder, again, being in her head, we obviously get a lot more. And I think outwardly, she's probably the type of person that, reading a holy book or reading a prophecy, she believes every word. And so I just wonder then why she feels comfortable creating Lightbringer if she thinks that it has to be something. But Vanessa, I think you may have hit the nail on the head when you said that it's sort of a bridge to get Stannis there, to get the warrior there, the one who'll stand against the great other. I like that. That's great.
Thanks.
Let's jump back to what she sees in the beginning. And I just want to see if this is a lot of stuff that she sees, but in particular, I want to talk about perhaps the places she's seeing or some of the events she's seeing. So, in the beginning of the chapter, she sees eyeless faces, towers by the sea crumbling, a dark tide sweeping over them, blood and skulls and mist, bodies locked in lust, curtains of fire, great winged shadows wheeling against the sky. Now, we don't have to take those line by line and everyone try to speculate what that means, but talk a little bit about that section and what you think she's seeing there.
Well, I think I've seen a lot of speculation about what the eyeless faces mean. I'm kind of the opinion we should take it maybe at face value, because I think some of the other ones you can speculate a little more about, but the fact that we see the eyeless faces appear in this very chapter later on,
yep.
I think that's meant to show us that yes, some of her visions are true, because here's the proof. She sees this is what happens. As far as the black and bloody tide specifically coming over the towers, I do like the theory that that's actually Old Town and the High Tower, because Euron seems primed to hit that pretty hard at some point in the Winds of Winter. So I think that definitely refers to Euron and not Eastwatch, because I think the action that's going to go down on the eastern part of the wall is going to happen at Hardhome and not necessarily Eastwatch. And I don't see a reason for there to be some kind of naval attack on Eastwatch. So I do think that would be more Old Town. Blood and Skulls and Mist. Like I said, I think the vision that she has of the cliffs with the fire, I think that's also Hardhome. I know, it's possible maybe it's Shadow Towers. They talked about fires in the mountains, but it sounds more Hardhome to me. And especially if you take, I know the show kind of does its own thing, but not the whole episode, but the episode where you see the attack on Hardhome, I do think we'll get something like that in the books. So that just screams Hardhome to me. The body's locked in lust. That's something I kind of question every time I read it, because I'm not sure what that's referring to or why that even matters in the grand scheme of things. Like, what does that have to do with the others coming in the War for the Dawn and all the other crazy things that are going on? So I still have a question mark. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. But then, curtains of fire, the winged shadows, dragons. I'm assuming that that's what that is referring to.
Some people speculate the body's locked in lust is Dany and Jon in the future, or even some of the potential kings and queens that maybe even Arianne and Fagon. I've always kind of looked at Curtains of Fire as maybe even yes, it could actually be Dragonfire and what's going on in Marine. But it could also be a vision of Blackwater. She might be seeing things that are just a complete and total rush of past, present, and future at any moment.
Right.
It's not described
kind of like a werewolf vision, like where you see different moments in time. Maybe
I like that. Yeah.
But let's jump into the next. And Vanessa, you already said that sounds a lot like Hardhome from the show, and I agree with you that the snowflakes and ashes, gray and white, flaming arrows, wooden walls, dead things beneath gray cliffs, fires in 100 caves. Then the wind and white mist sweeps in on cold, and only skulls remain. That I almost think they took almost that exact descriptor and put it in that Hardhome scene, because that's what we see in that setting. I love it. And I think you're right that it's either Hardhome or it's a combination of Hardhome and the Shadow Tower, because I think is it Dennis Mallister that writes to Jon and says, right, they can see 100 fires in caves beyond the Shadow Tower. But still, I think that's what's happening. That's the others attacking these, last wildling encampments near the wall. So I want to skip this next question, and I want to come back to her, what maybe happens to Melisandre going forward with her visions. I want to talk specifically about why Melisandre doesn't piece together that Azor Ahai may be Jon Snow, since that's what she's seeing. She, again, with a capital S, I see only snow. I ask for a glimpse of Azor Ahai, and I see only snow. Some people have speculated that it's proximity, that, Azor Ahai may not necessarily be Jon, it may be many people. And, is she just based on proximity only seeing Jon because he's there near her, or maybe he's, in her mind about other things? What do you all think about that vision?
Um, yeah, I mean, it could be something like that, or yeah, I don't know. Um, I lost my train of thought here.
Oh, my personal theory about why she wouldn't see it as John and why she's so adamant that it's Stannis is that she may have gotten some inkling of, okay, the Long Night Part 2 is going to happen. And so we know that there was this hero the first time. We know there's going to be a hero this time. And then tried to look and see, okay, who is this person going to be? I need to go help this person. My pet theory is that she was looking in the flames and saw Dragonstone. And because that's Stannis' seat now, she made the assumption, okay, well, that's Stannis is there, so it must be him. I'm seeing Dragonstone because I need to go to Dragonstone. I need to get Stannis. He's Azor Ahai. But there are two other interpretations. If John is indeed the son, a legitimate son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, he would be the Prince of Dragonstone. As the heir to the Iron Throne gets Dragonstone as their seat, and he would be the Prince of Dragonstone. And then going off the theory that Dany has something to do with being Azor Ahai, she was born on Dragonstone. So, there's two reasons she could have seen Dragonstone in the flames. And so the fact that she associates it with Stannis is why she went to Stannis. She obviously wouldn't know Jon is a Targaryen. Right. So she would probably, he has nothing to do with Dragonstone. Why would I see this kid that has absolutely nothing to do with this original vision that I saw about Azor Ahai? So that would be my explanation as to why she might be dismissing that.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, I just kind of thought too, like maybe Stannis was the first person she had seen in a vision, and then it kind of and now it's shifted towards Jon, and she doesn't have an explanation for it at all, so.
Yeah, and it's possible that she saw Stannis or she saw Dragonstone, like Vanessa said, and she came there and we'll get to hearing a little later about what we think her going forward she'll see or she'll do in response to some of the things.
She's had visions of Stannis fighting the others, right?
I think so. I think is it A Storm of Swords when she looks into the flames, or when Stannis looks into the flames. She shows him a great battle in the snow.
That could just be him taking Winterfell,
right? Yeah, exactly. I was just
going to say really quick, as far as her seeing Stannis. Another thing that may have happened is, we see the Daenerys in the House of the Undying, where she has the vision of the blue-eyed king with the flaming sword, as a one of the lies to slay. Well, maybe she had this vision of Stannis with the flaming sword because she made it for him. Maybe she does see that and doesn't realize it's a false Azor Ahai. Yeah, but she does see it. Yeah,
right. Because in essence, the vision, and then we'll move off Stannis. We talk too much about Stannis sometimes, but the vision that she has of Renly defeating Stannis beneath the walls of King's Landing, she helped create that, or you could say Stannis sort of helped create that, potentially, in the fact that the Tyrells dress up. So I really like that interpretation that it absolutely could be something, because like we said earlier, she could be getting a flood of past, future, and present visions that, again, she doesn't know. She's trying to project to Jon and others that she's capable and she is powerful. And so when he suggests Eastwatch, she says, sure, okay, that could be it. Even though she's been there. I mean, they landed there. She should know what Eastwatch looks like.
Well, she does say, it doesn't look like Eastwatch, but she sometimes visions are different. So.
Right. But but that goes to the point that she doesn't out loud say, well, wait a minute, John, I was there. Or that doesn't look like it. But she's
not going to admit
that she was wrong.
Insecurity.
I love that. I want to talk about, and again, we're just jumping around here, the bag of finger bones. At the end of and toward the end of the chapter, she's talking about, that glamours are, this powerful spell that changes not only the look of someone, but it seems like it changes their height, their demeanor, a bunch of things. And she lays out the fact that, you know, a lot of these glamours, these items help make a much more powerful glamour. And she specifically says comments about a bag of finger bones. And a lot of people have just been, whoa, wait, what? You know, because Davos is famous for carrying his fingers around his neck, and which he loses at the Battle of Blackwater somewhere in the water. What do you all make of that?
It'd be strange if she somehow had them, because that would be like, you know, like how would she even get a hold of those, you know? But
she'd have to be like a deep sea diver to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It is strange. And I wonder about that too. Like, how would she even get them? But yeah, obviously I don't think she has had Davos glamored before now. So it really makes no sense in any past context. So one thing I thought as I was rereading this is, you know, if she was able to get them somehow, perhaps she will glamour someone at some point into fooling maybe Stannis that it is actually Davos, because we obviously know he's not going to be anywhere in close proximity for a while. He's going to Skagos to get Rickon. But I would just had a thought, you know, if we take the assumption that Stannis is going to be involved in the burning of Shireen, perhaps she would have someone appear as Davos to basically tell him, yes, this is absolutely necessary, because, you know, he takes Davos's opinion into account most of the time when he's considering something. Not that Davos would actually ever say that, but it might just give him the last little push that he needs to make that decision, especially if it's like a dire circumstance, like, you know, they're getting attacked by the others, and this is absolutely necessary. That's the only context I could really think why she would need to glamour him. But yeah, that's the only thing that I could come up with.
That's pretty much, yeah, like where I went to. Like I think I'm not sure who came up with that theory, but when I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's the only way that would make sense in my mind, at least. I don't see it. Yeah, another reason to do it, to, you know, glamour, make a Davos glamour.
Yeah, I kind of read it, and I still read it this way. I think you're right, Vanessa, that there's the potential there, although she would obviously have to have his finger bones in order to, I mean, it makes it pretty clear that she's got to have some kind of item of the person to make it. You know, maybe she's more powerful at the wall and she's able to cast that spell somehow. I don't know. But it's almost, I kind of read it as kind of a longing. Like she's like, boy, I wish I had those finger bones. Like, I'll just say that, like, and it kind of goes back to the fact that, you know, she comments in this chapter that, like you said, Vanessa, that she saves Devon for a specific reason. And she also knows that Davos is one of the most loyal servant, or the most loyal servant to Stannis. And I just kind of read it just a little bit as her kind of longing. Boy, I wish I had those, because my king could really use, if something happens to Onion Knight, he could really use that person around him in the future. But I
actually really do like that. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Let's stay on glamours here. And I just found it really interesting the way Mance Rattleshirt comments on the glamour, that, you know, it's almost kind of like a shackle. It burns you, it holds you in place. He wants to get it off. He, you know, keeps talking about prying it off, almost like it's, you know, it's binding him. And I kind of saw that as a sort of a metaphor for Melisandre herself. That, you know, I think there's the show makes it pretty clear that she herself is glamored. Or glamored herself. But I think that's also kind of a way to describe her, and maybe even her duty to the world or to R'hllor, that, you know, she's kind of shackled in this. You guys kind of see that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I think she is basically a slave to R'hllor. I mean, she describes herself as being one. She was sold off to the temple when she was a child, but now she's more of a willing slave, because she truly thinks that it's her duty to help R'hllor fight the Great Other and save the world. So yeah, I definitely agree with that
It's
take
like
on it.
it's like the weirdest case of Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. Well, even as she's describing when especially when she's seeing or hearing the Melanie in the Lot 7 and she's describing herself, there's a fire burning inside of her. But I always read but on this reread, I saw it again. I always read that her tears were flames as, she was crying and they were burning. But that's how they tattoo slaves in Volantis, right? They've got these flame tattoos around their eyes. So I wonder if that's what Melisandre looks like under the glamour, that she has these tattoos on her.
It's very possible.
Yeah. So let's talk about her comments that she believes Stannis and Jon are extremely similar. She says that they're basically one and the same. They're unbelievers by nature, mistrustful and suspicious, following only the gods of honor and duty. I don't really think that. I mean, I think the comparisons between Jon and Stannis are accurate. There's a lot of comparisons there. I don't see Jon, though, as a Stannis. Maybe if the current path continued and in 20 years Jon was still doing what he was doing and he was kind of bitter and resentful of everything that had happened, he might be. But what do you all think about the comparisons between the two, and specifically what Melisandre says?
I think it's a pretty apt comparison. And I agree with you that if he stayed on that path, I could see him being much more Stannis-like. And as much as I like Stannis, he is definitely not an emotional person. He's really kind of cut himself off from feeling anything for anybody, and it's just all about duty. And you see Jon struggle with that ever since he joined the Night's Watch, trying to divorce his duty to the Watch from his love for his family, and not really quite successfully at a lot of times. But I think with Jon dying and being resurrected, like you said earlier, I think he'll be a very different person. I think he will indulge his more aggressive, wild, emotional side than he does now. I think he's really. I think one of the things that happens with these resurrected people is they seem to be very driven to do the last thing that they really remember. So like with Beric, it's finding the mountain and protecting the Riverlands and helping the small folk, and with Lady Stoneheart, it's getting revenge on the Freys for what they did to her family. And they're just very of one mind about what their duty is. And with Jon, I think it will be his family, because the last thing he was planning to do was go and march against Ramsay and save his sister. So I think we'll see more of him indulging that need for protecting his family over his duty to the Watch. And that may, come around later on where he'll remember the true threat and obviously go fight the White Walkers or others, Army of the Dead. But yeah, I think he will be, he's going to be a much more human version of Stannis than Stannis is right now.
The way you describe that, like with the people being resurrected and they're driven to do the last thing they were doing at the time, that sounds very much like a ghost. And it's kind of funny that he's got a dire wolf named Ghost. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, staying on resurrection, is it going to be Melisandre who brings Jon Snow back in the books?
I want to say, I mean, she's there. I mean, it's obviously going to be very different, but yeah, I think she's going to have some part to play, because I mean, they introduce like Thoros doing it, and yeah, so yeah, I think I don't know how she's gonna do it, but yeah, I think she's gonna have at least some part to play.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that too, and I'm really questioning whether Bran and Bloodraven might have some part in bringing him back, because obviously Bloodraven realizes John's importance if you assume that he's the one warging the crow.
Right.
It's says stuff like King John or King Snow, whatever he says. So he must realize John's importance, and if there is some kind of Children of the Forest old magic that they could employ within the weirwood net to help resurrect him, I think that they might have some involvement. And one of the things that I've been wondering is if they use some kind of old ice magic, for lack of a better term, and then Melisandre's using this fire magic to resurrect him. Will it make him more of a human normal person than the other fire whites that we've seen? Will they balance each other out somehow? Because I know you can't take the show as 100% gospel, but I do think it's possible he and Daenerys might get together and have a child. And from what we know of fire whites, that doesn't seem like it would be possible because their blood's not flowing. So, it's tough to figure out. But I do think because she's there, it just makes sense that she would do that. We've already seen it happen. It's the logical way to bring him back. But I do think Bran and Bloodraven will have some involvement somehow.
I like that. Yeah, and that was another of my quarrels. Is he gonna be kind of like the zombified like Beric and Lady Stoneheart? And I feel like that's not going to be the case. Like somehow there's going to be a workaround. I mean, it could, but he'll still have maybe some of the special abilities, like, being able to go into like sub-Arctic temperatures or whatever. But
yeah, and if you take the theories that Targaryens do have some kind of magical ability in their blood tied to dragons, like there's some genetic thing with Targaryens, and then the Starks have some kind of ties to the others, like genetically, like the Starks were some of the first others. You can imagine what that combination would do, and then you're resurrecting it. There's got to be something to it, I think.
Yeah. He could come back and he could be zombified, and we were just all hoping.
Could be. You never know.
It could just be wishful thinking, but hopefully not.
Yeah, there's so many, and the timing also. And I want to say something about the timing here in just a minute of when that occurs. John has all these special circumstances that are happening. One. His body is potentially going to be in an ice cell, so it's going to be preserved. 2, if he goes into Ghost, his mind not only is preserved, but it begins to take on those direwolf characteristics. I've always sort of leaned toward the Bloodraven Bran theory that they're going to have some involvement, and I kind of even wonder. Because Melisandre, again, she's misguided, and she's able to do. We know she's able to do things. I mean, she births a shadow baby, for God's sakes. But does she think she resurrects John? But it was actually Bloodraven and others. But she's like, "Oh crap! I didn't know I could do this." And whether she can actually do it or not, let's just focus on that. Whether she can actually resurrect John or not, but that she actually does it. She does it. Is that the breaking point for her? Is that where her eyes are like, oh, wait a minute, this is Azor Ahai? And the reason I brought up timing just a little bit ago, because, if Stannis really is defeated by the Boltons, or there is the story that he is dead, and the Queen's men and others find out, or, whatever, does that kind of start her crisis of faith? I mean, the timing still, I think she's got to be the one to push for Shireen. I mean, it's a jumble in my mind of how the timing's going to work out on all these events.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, because she could be like, oh crap, like I need to do something, or they're gonna march up here, or the Night's Watch are gonna just capture, well, Actually, I've got something that it's a little bit of a different subject, so I'll hold on to that. But
Hold that thought.
No, I was just going to say, I don't see her abandoning Stannis unless he is defeated or killed. I think she's going to hang on to he's Azor Ahai for as long as she can. The only other way I could see her leaning toward Jon is if she finds out that he is a Targaryen. Like, I think that reveal would have to happen first, because I do think she has some inkling that Azor Ahai needs to be descended from the Targaryen. He's got to have Targaryen blood, and obviously Stannis does, through his grandmother. Thinking that Jon's just this Stark bastard that has no ties to Targaryens at all, I don't see her making that connection unless she learns the truth about him. But yeah, the timeline is and that's probably part of the reason that's taking George so long to write the books.
Right,
like there's so much that has to happen, and when is it going to happen, and where, and yeah, it's hard to really kind of pick apart those plot lines and how they're going to proceed through the Winds of Winter. It makes my head hurt just thinking about it.
So let's, if for some reason, let's just go with the idea that Stannis is defeated by the Boltons, or I don't think he's going to be defeated at the Battle of Ice, but he could be defeated when trying to take the castle. So let's say she has gone to Jon's side. Now she's resurrected Jon, and do you kind of see her, back to our comments earlier about Lightbringer, that she's creating these trappings of power? Could you see her trying to do something like that for Jon? And could that possibly hinder him? One of Stannis's biggest, I guess I'll say, problems in the context of what other people, Varys, Tywin, the other lords, is the fact that he's got this foreign priestess beside him, even Davos, talking this weird religion with these weird ideas and these weird tactics, and they don't like him to begin with, but this really doesn't help his cause. What if Jon is being aided by a red priestess, especially in the north? That's got to be something difficult for the Northerners to take.
Right. I don't see him allowing that, actually. I think the show, although I think the reasoning will be different, him sending her away in the show, I do think will have something to do with what happens in the books. I don't see him, he's never liked that religion, and I don't see that changing necessarily, especially, if he becomes more tied to Ghost and like the old gods, and especially if Bran and Bloodraven appear to him, and he gets a sense of the power of the old gods, then I don't see him rejecting that and taking up the mantle of Valorism and keeping her on staff, so to speak. I used to have this idea that she might willingly sacrifice herself to him, and so he can forge Lightbringer in her, especially with the idea that she talks about her blood being black and smoking, and a lot of the terminology she uses in her own chapter brings to mind that Nissa, that agony and ecstasy, like the fire in her, the agony, the ecstasy. It would be interesting to see her do that, thinking that he might be able to actually forge Lightbringer for real. Wow. If she, provides herself as a sacrifice. That's the only other thing that I could think of, how she might leave the story.
I like that.
Yeah.
It could make the, I think I agree with you. I think she's got to be present for the sacrifice of Shireen, or be really pushing because she truly believes it's necessary. But if she would sacrifice herself, is Stannis desperate?
Yeah. Or she may sacrifice it. Yeah, she might sacrifice herself to Stannis, thinking that he can forge Lightbringer in her that way.
Right. Or if she sacrifices herself to Jon, and Stannis is like, well, she tried to sacrifice Edric Storm, and look what his blood did. So do I sacrifice my daughter? And that's how. It's just, again, the timeline is so jumbled, and there's so many plot points to work out. The Winds of Winter is going to be absolutely amazing.
Oh, what I was going to say earlier, I thought the show kind of did this well, they had her meet Barrick, and Thoros, and she was like, and they were, talking about how they revived him, and they kind of just set up that scene for later, which obviously it's not in the book, so you really don't have that. She has no knowledge of that, I don't think. So it I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool that the show did something.
Yeah, in season 3, I mean, she says this is a power you should not possess. This should be an ability you do not have. I think that's a really interesting introduction or inclusion in the show. What about her? There's an interesting line she also says in this chapter that she says, many a priest and priestess before her had been brought down by false visions. Does that foreshadow her downfall, or even potentially Stannis' downfall, but also kind of foretell the fact that she's going to have a crisis of faith, like she did in the first part of season 6?
Oh yeah, I definitely think we'll see something like that happen in the books. And I actually really enjoyed that part of the season, the storyline, because you're not used to seeing that from Melisandre. And I do think, she does doubt herself, but finding out that she was so wrong about something so important, I think would absolutely devastate her.
Yes. And I agree with you. I wish she had been a little more in season 6 and 7, but they played her very subdued after the events of season 5, that she was always kind of in the back, where before she would have been right there up front, smiling and, again, projecting this powerful being. And she's literally like sitting wrapped in cloaks, looking into the fire, sitting in a tent. Even when Jon Snow comes in, she's like, the Lord brought you back. I don't know why, but he did it. So yeah. Something's going to happen. So I think that she's definitely going to encounter that at some point in the books, and that'll be very interesting to read.
And it's almost like it took something out of her to do it, because she did have the crisis of faith. Her faith was restored, but she also seems like she's diminished somehow. Like it took a lot of her magical ability from her, because you just don't see her having that same air of power that she used to.
Right. Well, even in this chapter, she says something like, the cost had been so severe, so heavy. Like, there's the thought that part of the reason she doesn't create another shadow baby with Stannis is the fact that, she had to take part of his soul even to pay for it, and so she won't do that anymore. We know she tries to get Davos to do it with her, to create another one, and she even says in this chapter that a shadow assassin, a shadow baby that was created at the Wall, would be unlike anything else. Would be so powerful and so its ability so strong. Like, what do you think about that? What do you think the costs have been to Melisandre? And then I want to move into maybe how old she is. I mean, you can go into that. Let's combine those two. Let's say, what are the costs of her magic? What are the costs of her abilities? And then how old do you think Melisandre is?
I'm not sure what the costs have been to her so far. Like I said, we believe that she's glamored herself, so maybe it's aged her even more. But I think if she weren't at the Wall, it probably would have taken more of a toll. But she admits that there's such strong magic there that it's bolstered her own power. So I don't think she's realized a lot of that cost yet. Now, maybe if she gets away from the Wall, who knows what kind of impact that might have. As far as how old she is, I really struggle with this, because I love the theory that she is Bloodraven and Shira Seastar's daughter. I love that theory. It's fantastic, and it really makes a lot of sense if you look at all the clues. And I think it would be a nice irony that she believes Bloodraven to be the enemy and some agent of the other. If it's actually her father, it's kind of like Star Wars. But I really like that dynamic. But then you have, I think Carice Van Houten actually mentioned that she was told she was like 500 years old, which, you know, who knows if that's something the showrunners just made up or if that's something she heard from George. I don't know the source on that. So that could just be because the show's timeline or the show's perception is different of the Three-Eyed Raven is not Bloodraven. They don't even bring him up. And I think he says something like he's 1,000 years old or something in the show. So that doesn't really add up. So I don't know. I don't know if she's that as old as she said, the actress says that she is, then obviously she can't be their child because she would only be maybe 100 or so.
100, 110, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So it's tough. But I love that theory. So if I think, if that theory is correct, she's probably about 100. If it's not correct, who knows how old she could possibly be? Centuries.
Yeah.
Did George ever say anything like about her age or anything like that?
That's the speculation that was Carice told that.
Yeah.
Where the showrunners told, actually she's 400 or 500 years old.
She said she was told that, but I don't think she specified that George told her that.
Right.
So it could have been, the showrunners could have been told, hey, she's it's a really old woman and she glamours herself, and that's all they know. So they could have just, just made up a number. 500 years old sounds cool. Let's just tell her she's that old.
Okay.
I do like, I'm like you, I do like the idea that she's Bloodraven and Shira Seastar's daughter, but I also like the idea that she's 400 or 500 years old. Like, I think it makes it more impactful that she's far older, but I also like if she would be their daughter. It just, one of the points I think against that is, we see Old Nan in the story, and Old Nan is an exception to the rule in Westeros. I mean, a lot of people don't survive beyond certain ages. That was true in Middle Ages, in the medieval period. But I just think 90 or 100 years old or 110 years old, whatever it is, it's just not old enough for her to have, this not significance to the story, but these abilities. I mean, she was a slave. She was trained in a Shai. She came from, all these things. Right. I lean more toward her being very old, but that you're right. The Bloodraven Shira Seastar, there's a lot of clues to that, though.
The only argument I could say why I think she may not be quite that old is she still seems very unsure of herself at times. And you would think if she'd been around for centuries, she'd be a little more confident.
That's true.
Because Mokoro, just to bring another Red Priest into it, Mokoro seems very confident in his abilities, and he seems like he might actually be a little bit better at reading the flames than she is. So
yes.
I don't know. It's a good question though.
Yeah, I mean, that will be one of the interesting things to find out in the Winds of Winter. One, I think we'll probably get some look back at Ashai and Volantis, etc., from her perspective. But I'm really looking forward to, and we might even get a little bit of this in season 8 if she really returns with some other Red Priests and Priestesses. But I want to see what they think of her. Is she an outcast? Is she someone who is expelled? Is she someone who is like, don't follow her, she's trouble? I'm looking forward to that perspective from the other Red Priests, that especially if she's allied with Jon in the books and Dany shows up with all of these Red Priests behind her and they're like, whoa. You've got the wrong person. You've got the wrong Red Priestess on your side. That's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. So let's talk a little meta here about why we think George chose Melisandre as a point of view character. I'm not going to preface it. I'm going to ask you guys, why do you think George chose her as a point of view character?
I think the big reason is that he knew Jon was going to get killed off and he needed a POV at the wall. I mean, I honestly think that's the biggest reason. Two, I think another reason to introduce her beforehand is to get a little more insight into her character and her thought process, and maybe, humanize her a little bit, so you're not thinking, if she does bring John back, you're not thinking this evil red witch is resurrecting John. That can't be a good thing. You get a little more sense of her purpose. And so I think that, and he does say she's his most misunderstood character. So it could have also been a reaction to that, because I don't think wants people to view her as this complete villain.
That's what I was going to say, the exact same thing. Like he's already, said that she's really misunderstood, and so it's a good way to show that. But I also didn't take that into consideration that, we need a POV character at the wall, and that's probably the biggest reason.
Yeah, because she's gonna potentially in the Winds of Winter, we're gonna see the fallout of what happens between the Wildlings and the Queensmen. She's gonna obviously maybe discover John's body. Is she the one that puts it in ice? All that. Yeah, he's got to have that vision there. He's got to have that sight there at the wall. So I think you really wrap it up neatly there, Vanessa, that it's logistical, it's character, and it's also to set up potentially her abilities of bringing back John. And you don't want someone who's deemed as evil doing that to, one of the main protagonists of the story. Vanessa, you wanted to make a comment, and I wanted to talk about this when we were talking about John, but you wanted to make the comment about something we see from about John in this, that perhaps he's exhibiting some super strength.
Yeah, I love that moment, and then we see it a couple of other times, like when he lifts Alistair Thorne up, and I think it's a Game of Thrones, but when they bring when they find the heads of the Rangers on spikes, and it says something like it must have taken the Wildlings half the night to drive him into the frozen ground, and then he just takes one and wrenches it right out of the ground, and then he sends some of the other Night's Watch people to go over and get the other ones up, and you see them like struggling over, like two of them are struggling to pull them up. So yeah, like I said, it just reminds me of like that Waking the Dragon. There's just like some like primal strong something inside of him that wakes up whenever he gets angry, and kind of like the Hulk, he like hulks out or whatever. And I love that part of his character, and I think we'll probably see more of that when he comes back after he's resurrected. And it's going to be probably not good for the people that stabbed him.
It's kind of funny too, because he was doing some of that stuff when he was like 14, 15. Like, right. I don't know very many. Well, I don't know very many 14 or 15-year-old boys in general, but yeah.
When you were 14,
nope.
I didn't have friends that were.
I mean, yeah, like I'm sure and he's not even that big of a dude, and
no, he's small of stature, and
So it's just there's got to be something going on there with that super strength that he's got.
Okay, one question that I didn't that just came to mind before we kind of wrap up Melisandre and wrap up the episode. Do you think Stannis knows that the Mance that was burned was not Mance? Do you think he's in on Mel's saving of Mance Rayder?
The way I read it, I didn't think he was in on it. Like, that was just something that Mel made the call on, and
I don't think he was in on it either, just because he's such a stickler for the law that I don't see her being able to convince him that it's necessary. So I think it was all her.
And I think the Devon Seaworth, her saving and not really telling why she wanted to save him is one thing, and then two, the fact that she's perfectly lays it out for John that the king demanded justice be served. We did that by burning, quote unquote, Mance Rayder, but she knew that Jon Snow needed someone who was capable enough to save his sister. So yeah, I'm with you all that I don't think Stannis knew that.
It's kind of like what Eddard Stark was doing with Robert in Game of Thrones, where he was just kind of doing, not revealing all the information, or he changed the will to say your
Right.
heir. He kind of
Yeah.
he kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
he kind of bent the rules a little bit
He did.
to help
He did.
to ultimately help them out, and she's kind of
Right.
doing the same thing
Right.
for Stannis.
Yep. All right, so let's wrap up Melisandre here. Let's give our last comments on what we think of her as a character, her importance to the story, etc. So Vanessa, we'll let you go first as our guest.
Sure. So yeah, I really love her character. And I know, it was fairly ambivalent about her, I guess, until we get to her chapter in A Dance with Dragons. I think it really humanizes her. It makes her, it makes it easier to identify with her in a way. And I do think that she will have more of an importance in this story as we go forward, especially if she is involved with bringing Jon back. I'm really looking forward to seeing how she reacts to his death. One thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I did see a theory that she actually, by the end of this chapter, she does realize that Jon is Azor Ahai, and George is just cagey about revealing it, kind of like he is with Ned, us not really understanding who Jon really is, because obviously he can't reveal that yet. But there's a good theory. It's on Reddit. I don't remember who wrote it, but you guys can Google it and probably find it. But it actually, when you read the chapter and thinking that in the back of your head, it makes it read a little bit differently. But I do like that idea. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. But yeah, I want to see what happens with the fallout of Jon and his resurrection, and when she realizes that Stannis really isn't Azor Ahai, and how that's going to impact her, because she is tied up so much of her energy and attention into helping him realize his potential, and what's that going to look like if she has to suddenly shift to somebody else. And I think it's going to be a really fascinating story, especially if we get to see it from her point of view.
Yeah, I think her she's gonna have some role to play. I think she's gonna have some role to play with bringing Jon back to life as well. I was gonna say, I kind of think she is gonna be involved with the other R'hllor priests, but she's kind of like the one off. Like everyone else is like the where's the religion based out of? I forget where it's.
I think Volantis. Because there's the interesting thing about Melisandre, that she's a Shadowbinder, but she's also a Red Priestess, and I don't think those are one and the same.
Okay.
Because I think the Red Temple is in Volantis, because I think that's
Yes.
where everyone theorizes that Dany's going to go and be proclaimed Azor Ahai by them.
But yeah, they've already proclaimed for Dany, and so maybe they follow Dany over the sea.
Yes.
And then maybe they meet up, and then
And Melisandre may be the one to convince everyone that Dany and Jon together are the ones that are going to save humanity.
It could be like that, because she does that in the show, where she starts. She mentions Azor Ahai or something, and kind of leaves it vague.
Yeah, says they both have a role to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yep. I think you guys are both right on those points. The only thing that I'll add more about Melisandre, and this was a character that I really kind of liked from the beginning, both in the show and the books. There was just something about her that kind of drew me to her. And I like that George, he specifically, I think he's specifically commenting on the way women, females are viewed, not only in Westeros and Essos, but also in our own world, by making her this really sultry woman, this vixen-like, very sexually charged. But he also just paints her up like an interpretation of the devil in the Christian faith. Specifically a modern interpretation of the devil, with red, completely all over her. And I like that he just kind of throws that in everyone's face. And then in this chapter gives you the understanding that she's a lot more than just that. I'll be very interested to see why she creates herself in that image. Is it a seduction tactic or whatever? But I also think that she's heavily influenced. George is a big fan of comic books. I think it's heavily influenced by the character of the Scarlet Witch from Marvel. I think he kind of used that as a template for the way Melisandre looks.
Right, and I think and I think being a woman in that time period and that culture, you have very little influence, and like Cersei says, the woman has a weapon between her legs, and obviously Melisandre has learned how to utilize that, because it's such an easy way to manipulate men, especially men in power, to doing what you want, and so she's going to take advantage of that, I think.
Yes, she already has. Probably a lot more.
One last note, it just made me laugh. Like I always kind of glossed over that one line in her chapter, but where it says, with Stannis gone, her bed saw little use.
Yes.
It never really clicked for me.
Yep.
On past readings, and then just rereading, I'm like, I don't want to think about that.
Well, it's kind of fun. And but Devin, she makes some comment like he's like half in love with me, but like he's scared of me, and wants me at the same time. So she's like, I don't know, like
she knows what she's doing. I mean, she knows the power she's presenting and the power that she's gaining by looking and acting like this. So I think that wraps it up for us. I think this was a great chapter. She's a great character. We expect a lot from her in The Winds of Winter and season 8. And I'm perfectly fine if she shows up with an army of red priests and priestesses in the fiery hand to try to kick some butt of the army of the dead in season 8. Let's go for it. Fantasy up this even more. So Vanessa, thank you again for joining us. Just again, tell people where they can find you. Sorry.
Also, Vanessa, I looked up some of your art because I've seen you share it on Twitter, but I just didn't realize that you were making the art. And the picture with Jamie and Brienne in it, that one looks amazing. And I'm also kind of mad at you because that makes me want to give up on my drawings because yours are so realistic.
If you would have seen some of my earlier attempts, just keep working at it.
All right, so Vanessa, one last time, tell people where they can find you.
Sure. So you'll definitely see me posting on Watchers at the Wall a lot more as season 8 gets going. So definitely find me there. You can follow me on Twitter at VKColeArtist and on Instagram at VKColeArt.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Well, thanks for listening, and thanks again to Vanessa for joining us. Please like us on Facebook, Instagram, follow us on Twitter at Planetos Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, Podbean, just anywhere there's an RSS feed will pop up on any other platforms. Email us at planetospodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or ideas. A reminder, enter our Valar Predictus fan tournament by March 31st. This is your chance to have some fun, make some bold predictions for Game of Thrones season 8, and we're thinking of doing maybe a prize for nothing expensive, but we might try to plan something out for the winner or for the the top 3 maybe. So go ahead and you can submit those your predictions to our email. Just email us. And and I'm Brett.
He's Brett.
Yeah.
He's Brett. and I'm Travis. We'll see you around Planetos.
All right.